Alright, welcome to Tuesday Tips, episode 39. We are now on 6x6 centers part 2. This is going to be the more specific week of 6x6 centers. So last week we kind of went over what we're looking for when we build centers, the general ideas. And this week we're going to be talking about more specifics in terms of center building. Talk about exactly what you do at each part of the solve. So we're just going to start with the start. Pretty much inspection. So inspection and first two bars. So when you're inspecting 6x6 at the super advanced level, you should pretty much always be able to plan out, pretty much blind your first two bars. I think only the very worst cases will have it be impossible to plan out two bars. This really isn't too tricky. I think usually for me, I can do blind first two bars and know kind of where the pieces for the third bar are going to be. So like for this example, I'm going to do R wide 2 here, and then I guess I have this, so it'd be like, I'll just do an example, I guess, in my head. Like, usually, unless you have a really bad case, you're always going to be able to find two bars that you can completely memorize. This is obviously for the more advanced solver. So really, what you're looking for in inspection, the biggest tip for advanced solvers in inspection is that you don't need to be very comfortable with what you're doing. Like, inspection and your first two bars is a time where you can really kind of branch out and do something you're working on during your main solve, because there's no real risk of, you don't have to make the decision immediately. You can look at the cube, you can like, oh wow, this is a really tricky, maybe you're building 2x4s out of 2x1s. Like normally if that's normally pretty tricky for you, like it's not going to be that hard during inspection, and you can just plan out the whole thing and then easily do it in inspection. That's why you'll often see me, or I don't know, like I will often do a much trickier start, because I have so much time to plan it out. I can think about how everything's going to line up. It's a lot easier to do something tricky during inspection. So your centers, your first two bars and during your centers in general should be a lot trickier than what you're doing during the rest of your solve, just because you have inspection, you know what's going on. That's for first two bars. Obviously, I really just talk about first two bars. This could be applied to, like, if you're building inside out. All the other ways I talked about in the first video apply to inspection. But yeah, if you're under a minute 50, you should really be looking for full two bars. And then if it's really terrible, maybe not full two bars, but almost, you should always pretty much be able to get full two bars. And then you should have a general idea of where the pieces for the next third bar are going to line up. On second center, nothing too different than first center really here. The big thing about second center is that you get into the point where now you're not sure. You start seeing, I guess we should talk about in general saving bars on 6x6 centers. So in 5x5 centers, I made the comment that you should never build something, because 5x5 centers are so fast and easy that you should only do moves to save things that are already built for you. On 6x6 centers, this gets a little different, and it's really hard to make a blanket statement over what's correct, because it pretty much is an entirely case-by-case scenario. Usually on first center, I don't really recommend saving much, as the freedom you have on first center is so large that I don't think saving, unless it's like literally like two bars are already built for you, is not going to be worth it. On second center, you start getting to the point where you can easily, like, this face is locked now, and you're building bars here, and you can pretty much, if you have, say you have something like this, say you see something like this, you're building your yellow. Wow, this is 3 moves away from 2 blue bars right here. Now, the thing is right here, you've locked down this L wide, like these moves right here, because you have to preserve these 2 bars. But if you already have a bar down yellow, this isn't actually as big of a deal as it sounds, because it's pretty finger friendly. It's pretty natural almost. It's only going to cost, like I did an extra slice move there to save the bar. It's only going to cost you a little bit of time to keep this blue bar together. It's kind of natural when you build your centers, your next 4 centers, to always have preserving the left and solving on the right if you're right-handed. So this isn't going to be that too disruptive. It's really, in my opinion though, it's not going to be worth it to save. My opinion for advanced solvers is don't build 1 bar to save it. Like 5x5 centers, if a bar is already there, you can do a couple moves to save it. Only you are allowed to build your third center while working on your second one, but you need to be able to build 2 bars insanely quickly. Like, it should be like 2 bars in under a second. Like, holy crap, like, oh, 2 bars, boom, done. Or, I don't know, something super obvious, just like things like that. Like, okay, I got 2 bars, took me half a second, now I saved 2 seconds later. Stuff like that. But yeah, that's really the only thing in during your second center that's more sticks out from 5x5, because you still want to be doing things like reducing rotations. For 6x6 second center, the other thing that kind of goes on is, let me build my first center real quick. This cube's gross. The other thing that goes on in your second center solves is that, I'll talk about this in 7x7 later, I will. Say you have pieces in top like this. The thing about 6x6 is that since it's an even numbered cube and there's no middle layer, you can always easily retrieve the pieces on top. You should pretty much never, there's always exceptions obviously, case by case, but never take out pieces from the top without putting something else in. Like, wow, this is pretty much already solved. So you have two options, because this is the first bar. You could solve it on top, doing something like this and then that. But let's say let's pretend we're not gonna do that. We're gonna leave that here. Now we're just gonna make sure we take it out smartly. This I've already covered in other videos, other tips videos as well. I just kind of want to reiterate it here. It's really important to literally never take pieces out of the top, because there's no middle bars, so there's no reason to ever do this. Then transitioning on to centers 3 and 4. 3 and 4 centers are pretty much the same. There's nothing too tricky here. You're going to have to get used to... the biggest thing I saw, actually I picked up recently because of Felix, is that, say you have pieces like this, it's a really good idea to save your... so you have this. Save your... do your insertions and... or that's not cut out. Like, say you have something like this. So you could do insert here, or you can kind of do your insertion and move your bars to the left side at the same time. You kind of want to think about efficient ways to move your solid bars to the left side, because if you're right-handed, you want to make sure you have the right side freedom. When you're on the next 4 bars, it's even more... the ability to save centers is even more... it's more likely that you're going to want to save centers, because when you're building your second center and you're locking down the left half of your M layer to build your bars, that's kind of unfortunate. But the thing is, when you're on bars 3 and 4, especially when you're on center 3, you're already going to lock down your left side, because you're going to build 2 bars here. If you lock down the left side here again with another bar, even though this is the wrong color scheme, that's not a big deal. I haven't lost any freedom. In fact, I now have essentially less space for the correct centers to be, so this is pretty much a good thing in general. This kind of translates to the idea of half centers on 5x5. I definitely do not think it's a good idea to build half centers deliberately on 6x6, but if they essentially are already built for you like this, like if I'm doing 6x6 and I see this, okay, well I'm just going to build these 2 bars real quick and then continue going. And 6x6 center 3 and 4, it's okay to put a tiny bit of effort into building a single bar to save, but it really needs to be very quick. Don't really put any, like, it's obviously give and take in terms of what's worth it. So that's pretty much centers 3 and 4. The specific ideas there. I'm just going to fix color scheme because... right, so centers 5 and 6, which is just the same center. Essentially, the key here for advanced method is that never build 1 bar at a time. There's almost no scenario on 6x6, especially, where you're going to want to build the left bar and then the second bar. You build these at the same time every time. Right here, boom, 2 bars. Pretty much, I don't even know the last time that I built 1 bar on the left and then the next bar on the right. You always build, essentially, like 95% of the time, you build the 2x4 at the same time. There's so few options for these pieces to be that they are going to be set up in a good 2x4 position literally every single time. And then you build a 3rd bar, and then you build the other bar. The other big note I'll have on this 6x6 is that I'm not going to, I guess this is more a theory and something I'm not good at. There are a couple options. This is more something that'll come up in walkthrough solves, and maybe I'll take a video about it in theory later. There are a couple options for when you're building your 3rd bar, that there might be 2 different ways to build it. And one of the ways will give you, these 2 wings paired up, and one of them will have the 2 wings separated. Obviously, when the 2 wings are paired up, it's better because you don't have to do a commutator. If you get into a position like this, you have to do a commutator, which takes a couple seconds. Obviously, you don't want to do that. So it's much better to pick the 3rd bar option that'll save the 4th bar. I don't have a definitive method on this. This is kind of something I felt out over a lot of years. I've just noticed different patterns. Like, oh, if I solve the 3rd bar this way, I'll get the 4th bar. You pretty much have to look at, you're not just looking at the 3rd bar, you're looking at all 8 of the remaining edge pieces, and you're seeing Okay, I have 8 remaining edge pieces left. How do I solve this in a way that will preserve, like that wasn't the way. How do I solve this in a way that will preserve like these 2 pieces staying together and then matching up the other ones? This is kind of tricky, but for certain cases it's pretty easy, and there's definitely different options. It's definitely something, if you're like a sub 150 solver, you need to be looking out for, because this is definitely something that'll help you out. I know some people have, I actually got a message about this the other day, some people were looking into how to do this for every single case. And I was thinking about kind of looking at that, because I think that's a good step and towards saving a lot of time. But right now, that's kind of more just theory on my end on whether or not it's worth it. But it's definitely something to be looking out for, because there are a lot of easy cases that are definitely easy to just naturally figure out. Yeah, so that's pretty much about it for centers. I guess I do have one more trick for centers. I guess this is more of a parity trick. So say you mess up your color scheme and you're on 3x3. And you've already built your cross. You built your cross like an idiot around the wrong center. So you built like this. So what I used to do is don't do this. This is bad. This is slow. I didn't realize this for a while. Hold your cross on bottom. This will preserve your cross and will preserve some of your pairs if they're set up right. So definitely do it that way. It's a much better idea. That's my final kind of tip on centers. I guess everything else I talked about in this center series that I didn't really go into too much depth on will be covered kind of partially in the walkthrough solve section, and then it might just show up in general tips and analysis later on, because there's a lot of very minute specific cases that I kind of say you need to kind of be watching out for on your own, but it'd be way too much to go into them in detail, each one individually, and it'd be almost impossible to kind of generate them. So that's pretty much more of just directing you on this. These are the things you should be looking out for, and then you're going to have to do kind of some of the legwork on your own. So yeah, that's it for this week.